our second episode. Today we're going to be talking all about whether people of color can be racist or not. So, first of all, I think, let's discuss what racism is to us. Like how do we define racism? I think that's an interesting.
The way it's defined in the dictionary.
That was going to be my question. Well, racism, the dictionary meaning, and if you do feel like you are superior over another race, and so you tend to act, you act off that racism, that superiority, that would be maybe making them feel inferior, and that would be the dictionary meaning of it. And can black people be racist? I feel like that statement does not refer to the dictionary meaning.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
That's how I feel, at least.
Do you think people can be racist? Do you think
Black
people? Yeah. Do you think black people can? Okay, actually, people of color, for example. Do you think colored people and Indian people can be racist towards black people, and black people can be racist towards them and towards each other?
Do you?
Yes.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, why?
But I mean, I think as he was talking, I actually realized there's so many definitions.
Yeah.
Because, there's the dictionary definition, which is discriminating against someone because of the color of their skin.
Because of the color of their skin, yeah.
You could say, I mean, like, with black people, I think, for instance, like if a black person hates a white person, it's not necessarily racism in its traditional sense. It's something else, because then it's got historical things attached to it. So I think then if you move on to like people of color and Indian people hating on each other, then that's also something different, because it's not. It may not be like you hate someone like literally because of the color of their skin, but just because you've been taught to see them in a certain way, because like you think they behave in a certain way, stereotypically. So I think.
So you think like when black people hate white people, for example, Indians, it's based on stereotypes.
When black people hate white people?
Yeah.
No, I think that's more just you hate white people because you feel like they've just screwed you. Like as a South African,
like systemic
historically, it's just like
Although,
you look at a white person and it's just like inherently.
I don't feel safe though generalizing it that way. Saying that we're assuming that every black person, if a black person hates a white person,
because of.
it's because of. That to me, I wouldn't say is correct. I wouldn't say it's completely correct. I would rather seek out to find the mental standpoint. Why do you hate? Tell me, why do you hate a white person, right? If you hate them just because of the color of their skin, then it goes back to the dictionary meaning, right, of racism. And in that context, a black person can then be racist. You can't just hate a person because of the color of their skin, right? If you as a black person hate a white person, or you hate an Indian person, because of actions that they have carried out towards you, then you have a valid reason. It's basically derived from the horrible actions that white people have been carrying out on black people, right? And if as a black nation we hate white people because of that, then our emotions are substantiated.
So do you believe in reverse racism? Do you think reverse racism is a thing?
Let's unpack that. What do you mean?
For example, though this is a little bit off topic, but affirmative action in BEE, and even like with the land question, a lot of people are saying it's reverse racism, because racism is about discriminating against people, but having the power to affect their livelihood and basically affect their quality of life. Like for example, the apartheid government and colonial powers had the power to institutionalize their dislike and their hatred towards black people. So
are we saying that affirmative action, asking for that come back, is a form of
reverse racism?
Reverse
That's what a
racism.
lot of people have been saying.
So then,
What do you think?
Yeah, let's.
I'm trying to unpack my thoughts.
Yeah.
But I would assume that in the first instance of racism, the fact that we're actually asking for that is because of the initial form of oppression. So then to counter that by saying it's reverse racism might be going off the idea of racism as it stands.
What is your idea of racism?
So I don't know, because it's a loaded term, and then we'd have to also understand what do we mean by race, because also race is contextually different, and where we're standing here or sitting here in South Africa, race means something completely different to somebody who's in America or in Europe, because white people feel oppressed by other white people, as we would read them as being Caucasian. So then I don't like the idea of putting labels, because then semantics always get distorted in how we then relate to what we're trying to say. So that's when we speak of reverse racism or we speak of racism, for me I'm just like, are we, like, what does that look like and how does that look? Do we mean oppression? Because that's possibly what we could be looking at, as opposed to racism. Because then oppression would be the system of apartheid, the system of colonialism, and those are systems or institutions that were placed in to kind of formulate this form of oppression. But then if we look at racism, I don't know how to contextualize that or define that.
Wouldn't you say that that kind of oppression stems from
Racism. But then let's go back to what race is, and how was race then institutionalized?
Okay.
So like race was not, it didn't exist before some scientists saw the difference between our skins. Like, oh,
Wouldn't you say that even,
Scientists,
yeah, I
it
would
was
say that it's
politicians who then
who
got
needed a
scientists.
capitalist, they
So
had
then
a
was
capitalist
it-
agenda and said, hey, we need to separate
Yeah.
the top from the
definitely,
bottom,
yeah.
and we're going to do it by skin color.
So is that then, I still have a problem with defining racism. Just because it's so, I
It's
don't
quite
know, it's
broad.
quite,
Like, would you define xenophobia as a type of racism? Or would you...
so
yeah,
then
like, would
does
you define that as a black
does
on black
racism go
racism,
back
for
to the skin, or does it go back to ethnicity or tribalism?
I think it's
Tribes, rather.
it's tricky then, because when you're talking about ethnicity, it's not race. I mean, you're not talking
Yeah.
about race.
I mean,
But then
all
the
these things
forms
are
of-
like, it's all oppression,
Yeah,
based
but then-
on tribalism
Yeah,
or
it's
race.
Based on phenotypical features
Exactly.
or different biological
Exactly.
background.
Yeah.
Because
'Cause
then
I mean-
we'd also bring in sexism, because in as much
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
racism exists, there's the whole debate about sexism, and then all the other discussions or debates that then formulate out of looking at gender.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really interesting to talk about it, because some people think that, for example, white people are inherently racist
Yeah.
and men are inherently sexist.
But then if you go back to
So-
even if you go back to
Touchy.
so
Charles Darwin.
how it, like childhood, like if you look at children and their interactions, there's no, it's only through learned experience
Yeah.
do we then
Yeah.
formulate. So it's an institutionalized thing as opposed to something that we can define, because a child won't look at another, like a white child won't look at a black child, or a black child
oh my
won't look
God.
at, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
they'll just see, oh no, we have a different skin
Yeah.
tone. Oh, maybe it's just because we're different, because
And
we look,
sometimes they don't even
we look
notice that
different.
they-
Yeah.
So it's not inherent, it's learned.
So then how do we then
Society.
still go back and say racism when it's something that's institutionalized, as opposed to something we can define and put it in a box and say, this is racism?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's interesting actually.
Yeah.
I don't know how to actually.
What do you think?
Oh, I'm still gathering my thoughts.
You've been gathering for a minute.
No, but I agree with what Edikiana said, because there's so many nuances in this discussion. Because it does go back to what is race and who defines race, and just contextual situations like in South Africa, how race came about. The fact that 70 years ago, people wouldn't identify via race the same way we identify via race. Then now when we talk about racism, what are we talking about? Because people do like to throw out terms, and people do like to say, okay, white people are innately racist and men are innately sexist, you know. But I think that is also just being too broad, because it's not true. Like you said, these things, race and sex, or race and gender, are social constructs. How do we distinguish between a man and a woman? What is a man versus a woman? What is a black person versus a white person? What do you guys think? You guys as men, how do you see sexism? And no, because like we are talking about.
No, definitely is a trap, and I'm gonna try and not fall into that. But I would say that going back to the topic of can people of color be racist, taking from the points that we've been sharing, that look, at the end of the day, the idea of race came about by capitalism, pretty much.
Capitalism.
And definitely. So when that is the context, then I would stand firmly at saying that no, people of color cannot be racist in that context.
Okay, why?
Because at the end of the day, the motives of after, first it was capitalism, and then through that came racism, and the effects of that were then the oppression, which basically would be what the whites carrying out oppression onto the blacks, so that for me it says that the white people are the racist ones, and black people cannot be racist because of that.
What do you call it
when
when
color cannot be racist? Like,
okay, what if I express some kind of hatred towards you as a black person, we're both black, and oh my god, black men in power though, hey? I just can't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I generally, let me not say I have issues, but like, for example, if you, like when we're dropping my sister off at her res, and they let all the white people through, and then they don't let the black cars through, for example, black drivers through, and it's a black, this is the thing, and it's a black security guard, for example. What do you call that? And let's say I respond and I say, black men in power always behave in this way towards other black people, like that kind of oppression. What do you? How do we identify that?
It's learned once again, and it goes back to the fact that as black people for a long time we've been taught to hate the idea of blackness.
We've been taught to hate ourselves. Yeah,
hate ourselves.
I feel like you just basically painted out a picture of you painted out a picture of an oppressed mind.
Okay, so
whose responsibility is it to unoppress yourself? Like, are you going to carry on?
Society.
In as much as
So
it was a collective effort to suppress people of color, it should be a collective effort as well to liberate people of color.
So then don't you think then, like, you're denying the person agency by saying it's someone else's responsibility to liberate you?
No, here's the thing. That's why
we're not completely handing over the responsibility.
Sorry, when I say society, I'm talking about that person themselves and everyone around them.
Sure.
So if you see that someone else is still mentally colonized, then I feel like yes, you can sit back and say, okay, you need to figure it out yourself, but at the same time, you can go sit with them and interrogate and ask them and say, why are you like this? They tell you, then, you talk about it, and hopefully that leads to...
honestly, guys, we can't say that every man for themselves, because that wasn't the case with our oppressors, it wasn't the case that everyone was actually with, to make a very out there example, everyone was with Adolf Hitler. It wasn't the case that every German was with. Some Germans actually tried to help Jews, right? Yeah, and to the same extent, white people did try to help some some black people or some people of color through the ages of slavery and apartheid and all that. But at the end of the day, I feel like the greater majority, the majority that didn't have, that was pretty much on a, like at the middle, didn't have their mind made up. fell within the if it was really a minority or majority, but they fell on the side that was pushing the agenda of
You're saying the majority of white people.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. So I feel it's also now if we're going to liberate the black nation or the color nation or the nation of color, we really can't just say that also that person that we can see that who is very obvious to us that they are oppressed mentally. We can't say that they need to get themselves out because
How do we get people who are, expressing internalized racism?
yeah.
How do we fix that?
So before I answer that question, I'm going to go back to your first question was when a person how would I react to a woman
And
that
actually,
would,
I was asking you what would you call that, and you guys
Yeah.
said that it's just another form of oppression.
yeah. So my first reaction actually would be towards the woman to say, okay, look, I don't know what is going on in that person's head as yet, but what you just showed me is that you'd rather go over the fact that this person is actually oppressed mentally, and you'd rather pass over the opportunity to try and liberate this person at the effort of actually pointing a finger and going, no, men in power.
No, I didn't say men in power. I said black men in power.
Okay, black men
but
in
I think
power,
even
yeah.
That's
in,
messed up.
in me saying black men in power, I am acknowledging years of first of all institutionalized racism, and then I'm acknowledging apartheid and colonialism and the effect that it's had on this
Okay.
black body.
Then could we call racism, or is it something that's systemic?
I mean, I think it's systemic racism.
So-
Because I think that my problem is when we look at institutionalized racism and we look at apartheid and we look at we've gone through 350 years of colonialism, and then now where do we kind of take responsibility for anti-blackness and our own internalized racism as black people, like the kind of racism that we it's tricky also to say racism because I want to be clear that racism is about a power thing, you know what I mean, right?
Prejudice.
Yeah, it's about prejudice,
Yeah.
and having power to enact it on another body. But discrimination, let's say black on black discrimination. How do we address it? If this guy is actually not willing to change, what do you do? Or if this woman is not willing to change, because it's black people in power who sometimes oppress other black people who are under them.
Okay, I'm just gonna.
I mean, let me
Yeah.
put it out there. Like, what are we doing about internalized racism within our own?
I don't think we're doing enough about it because we're always too focused on whiteness, and whiteness is thing that we never actually stop to think about black on black violence or black on black oppression, because even when you talk to flawless and self-identified flawless anyway, like they're quick to always blame everything on white people and stuff, and I'm like, black people also play a role in oppressing other black people, so it's time we deal with it. But the interesting thing is, I was talking to one of my friends and she self-identifies as being Indian, and she was complaining about the exact same thing, and her thing was actually, Indian men in power are always problematic, because she experienced the exact same thing of an Indian man in power victimizing her. And I think it's very interesting when black people say it and you find out that Indian people also say it, and you find out that colored people also say it, then it's a problem.
White people say it as well.
Yeah, white people also say it. So what is the actual problem there if all of the races are experiencing it?
Do white people say that though?
Well, white women will say
white women.
white
Okay, white
men.
women will say
Yeah,
white
men.
men.
But I mean, I feel
Yeah,
like
okay.
it's a case by case thing because it's kind of generalizing. Once again, if you say black men in power or white men in power, it's all generalizing. So I think an individual needs to be able to separate themselves from their situation, in the sense that you should be able to understand that not all men are like that, or not all women are like that.
Hashtag not all men.
I mean, I hate to go there, but it's true. The truth is, if someone has lived through something, maybe a black woman has been abused by several black men, then her understanding of black men is that they are a certain way, they're abusive. that's not to say that all black men are that way, but it's to say that all the black men she's encountered are.
I mean,
I feel like it's very difficult because I know one of my other friends is like, he believes that all heterosexual people are innately homophobic or transphobic, right? One of those. And I think it's I don't know. It's difficult to say that not all heterosexual people are homophobic when a lot of them are, you know.
But do you feel like it's true? Do you feel like not all heterosexual?
Yeah, I feel that it's true, but like I know Steve Biko always says that the exception does not invalidate the rule. So even though there are a lot of heterosexual people who are not homophobic, it doesn't invalidate the rule that the majority are. Well,
no, that's fair. Yeah, I just feel like when you say one thing, you need to be able to say the other as well, as opposed to just saying one and making it seem like that's the truth. Do you know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to say about separating yourself. You need to be able to say, okay, are they all like that, or have I just experienced the ones that are? Do you know what I
the
mean?
thing is though, because I feel like specifically, okay, let me not say specifically, because black women can also be like, for example, I've experienced it. I'm sure a lot of other black women, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but like when you have a black cashier, sometimes she can be really disrespectful, you know, and then okay, I'm glad that it's not just a woman thing, you know. She can be really disrespectful towards you, and you're like, what did I do? She doesn't smile, she doesn't greet you, you know. And then if there's somebody of another race, and they're just they're so happy to be serving them, you know, and put on a smile. You
Again,
know?
it's the same point. It's oppression.
But why, like, because my
Very
point,
historical.
besides,
You're taught to be that way.
but why aren't we acknowledging that we are this way? Do you know what I mean? Like, why aren't we? Okay, so then basically we're saying that, okay, black on black discrimination does exist, but why aren't we taking cognizance of it? For example, why do I have to walk through a store and have a security guard following me? You don't know that really. That's, you can even ask my sister. It's like, guys, really.
But I think it goes back to what she said, just about the fact that we're so consumed with whiteness, and it is a form of whiteness in itself, because then it's kind of something that has been taught to us, this innate disregard for our own race, or this, and that's where, and I think that's where hierarchy then comes into the picture, looking at the different levels or the different influences that, so when we see, so in most spaces that just don't acknowledge the, like, that discriminate against a black body, it would often be where capitalism comes into the picture. So it's like are you going to give me, you know, enough for me to actually pay attention to you? Like, if you receive the same treatment at a restaurant, where a waiter or waitress would treat you a certain way according to the color of your skin, and that's where, and even your gender in most instances, because then you'd find a table with a bunch of black guys would get better service than you black ladies at a table.
Are you saying then that we can blame that attitude of self-inferiority to capitalism?
Sorry,
I think
before
it's-
you continue, it's been 20 minutes.
there's racialized capitalism.
I think there's racialized. That's an interesting too.
Should we blame, you know, capitalism for our mindsets? Because I at this right now, I feel like can we not shift the blame? We have at this point we also have ourselves to blame. As well.
We have ourselves to blame, but then the system is the one that
and I'm not trying to
created
quote
that
Kanye
mindset.
when I say that.
Oh no!
Okay,
man.
I've grown to realize how many people of color tend to nurture our white counterparts on egos, right?
What do you mean by that?
Like white fragility.
White
Yeah.
tears.
So there was a question posed at where I work, right? The lady wondered what black tax is. And okay, sure, that's fine. You're a white person, you may not know what black tax is. You just want to learn. That's good. the first person to come to the lady's aid was a black guy, right? Naturally so, it should be, right? Because
Should it be, though?
I feel like we're at a better standpoint to explain what black text is, especially
black
if-
people?
Black text, yeah, black people, yeah.
She could literally have Googled it, I feel. Anyway.
I mean, yeah,
Is
she
it
could
even
have,
on Google?
but
yeah, black sex is a thing.
she could have,
I knew it was
but
a
she
thing, I just
didn't.
thought
She
it was
asked us,
exposed.
right? So the guy
Urban Dictionary, even.
was he completely digressed from the actual what black text is. I think it was at an effort to not to offend the lady, because he just spoke about how yes, black text is based on around helping out at home, but that's like a really broad way of putting it, and he pretty much left it at that. And I was like, no, dude, that's not what you tell a white person when they're asking what black text is. You tell
Then they'll
them,
start saying, oh, well,
yeah,
white
we
text,
help.
I've got to do the
We
dishes
also,
too.
yeah, and it's not about that. Black text is about you have to go back home and help your siblings that are coming out to get into school. You have to go back home and fix that one room house that's breaking down. You have to go back home and fix, the life there. He was trying to avoid the subject of white privilege and black, and I went into that, and I feel like that's what we should do. When we don't be afraid to talk about black text and white privilege when the opportunity comes up, especially not only to white people, but to to black people as well, so that they learn to stand their ground. And that, I think, is where we're missing a lot of because we tend to throw our hands up or back and go, okay, that's how he decided to put it, and that guy is oppressed. I realize that guy is not, he's afraid of actually painting the entire thing and potentially starting a debate,
But okay, on one hand, do you think it is his responsibility to educate her?
It is.
Really, why? Because don't you feel like that's also another form of oppression? Like feeling the responsibility, like I have to educate white people about racism in the 21st century.
But are you educating about racism, or are you educating about something that they could understand racism but not know what black tax is? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I also think that there's some things that, in terms of framework, you can't necessarily get everything with Google. You need somebody with a personal experience to explain where they're coming from.
What it
because
is,
like black tax, it might seem vague, like a Google definition. But if I explain from my situation, listen, this is how it is at home, and this is my lived experience. And I think lived experience comes in handy because we live in a social in society, and society includes being social or in contact with beings, and that would essentially include some form of psychological conditioning. And so when we throw in terms, it makes it very complex, because then you can't really label things as they are because they're so different.
Yeah.
And so I would assume that when we speak about discrimination, I think perhaps being, what do we mean? So do we mean being prejudiced to somebody because they look different? So then in that instance, then I would assume that that's what we are experiencing. It's a form of discrimination from a form of oppression that was experienced because of historical trackings. And how do we undo that? That would also, in as much as that might be a responsibility, it will also be a responsibility for the other being to actually take the time to learn, because in the society that we live in, people are so quick to throw your argument and just shoot it out the window. When you tell a fullist, no, but this is ABC, the immediate response is whiteness. The immediate response is and you're just like, let's go back to the beginning, guys. Let's go back to other countries which did not necessarily experience whiteness to the extent that South Africans did. We had apartheid, they had colonialism, and then they had to undo all those workings. And then they also had leadership that was a bit problematic in that that created forms of tribalism as well.
Do you think that?
So also, I just want to try and. Are we talking about African leaders?
Yes.
Okay. Because that's not out there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think in terms of I've got two things to say. The first thing is, do you think that because we're talking about undoing this kind of institutionalized discrimination towards other black individuals, should it be something that is institutionalized in the same way that
Sorry, say that again?
apartheid? I'm saying like should undoing internalized discrimination like anti-blackness, should that be institutionalized? Is the only way to undo it institutionalizing it, like
How do we institutionalize?
like putting it into the syllabus and into different education platforms,
Anti-black.
But then
undoing anti-blackness.
Okay, undoing.
but
Yeah.
in as much as that we speak about racism, we speak about history, we speak about all the, but that does not change people's mindsets about.
Yeah, because
I
I'm
mean,
just thinking
but
like
it's also not a thing of the snap of a
Exactly.
finger.
no,
That's where I'm going. Yeah.
I feel like
Will
the
we
fact
ever be
that
undone?
the very fact that we're all having this conversation shows progress. I think sometimes we expect it's been how many years? 24 years.
Yeah, no, it is
We
true.
feel like it's been a long time.
It
Like, if
kind
you-
of has though.
No, if you're
No.
talking
Like,
about
okay,
if you talk
I
about
mean-
centuries
If
of oppression,
apartheid only
But
lasted
also look
for
at
24
America.
years, I assure you, if
America is
Yeah, no, I'm
is
saying,
really
I'm
small,
saying,
but-
I'm saying, look at America. They're still experiencing.
exactly, yeah.
So then, how
bad.
do we then?
But the difference though is they're a minority. African Americans are a minority,
Yes,
and that
yeah.
goes back to
But,
African
then
leadership.
that's still-
No,
but here's
so
the
the
thing: it's a
effects are
minority,
showing,
there's a
though.
majority
I
here.
feel like-
and we're
I
still
feel like
going
also-
through
Do
the
the
same
same-
shit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
No.
understand, but what I'm saying is that we have more power. Like they don't
Do we
have.
though?
What I'm saying is we have population
What kind of
power.
population
We don't have
power?
economic
But
power.
The
definitely
majority of
population
the
power.
population
Exactly,
but the majority is
doesn't have the
still-
tools.
Yes, that's
So
true. But
also-
can we?
Exactly.
Okay.
But also, I
Education.
think you can't really say they don't have the tools because, when we also talk about black consumerism, black people spend money. We
Black
spend
people
Just
A lot
because
of
they
money.
spend a lot of money
But then
doesn't
what
mean
is
they own a
ownership
lot
as
of
well?
money.
What we
Right?
have to then go into the nuances of ownership. What do we mean by ownership? What do we mean by owning the economy? What is the economy? What type of economy are we talking about here?
I mean, look, the reality is that most economies in the world are white owned.
Yes,
right? So
agreed.
I feel like I remember I was listening
Are
to
we
this.
talking about economies? What about so-called the black market and black economies? Are those also white owned? Is every
Oh,
single space
define what a
like
black market is.
Okay, no, like you mean like the black business.
No,
for
I
example.
also mean when we talk about informal versus formal sector. I think it's too broad a statement to say the economy is white owned because what economy are we talking
Oh,
about?
it's broad,
Because when
sure,
we-
but
when
I
we
feel
talk
like we
about-
all know what
No,
we're talking
that's-
about.
No,
I'm
no, when
sorry,
we
but
talk
that's
about
kind
the
of being
econ-
naive.
all of this.
No, she's not being naive. She's
Let me
just
finish
saying,
my
like-
statement.
Okay.
So all of the statistics that come about when we talk about the economy are all statistics that talk about the formal economy. We're not talking about the
Talking about
informal
JC,
economy.
you're talking about.
That's it.
Yeah.
So what happens if we
Monopoly
include?
capital.
So
What
are you
happens
saying
if we
that
include the informal sector into the definition of economy? Will it still be white majority or will it be balanced?
Okay, I don't know the stats, so I can't.
are
speak
you
on
saying, are you ignoring the power that the formal economy or
No, the
corporate
informal economy.
Okay, no,
Because
are
you
you
know
ignoring
how
the
always
power,
economy has.
the power that formal economy has over informal economy?
Does the
Because there is a power there, and
Exactly.
really, if they wanted to tip, if the formal economy wanted to tip the scale, they really would.
they have already though. They have already.
Well,
but
sorry, can I just ask you something, Oliver? What are we saying about the economy right now? How did ownership come into this?
yeah,
Like,
you know,
I'm-
we're talking about because we're talking about black money basically.
And we're
Okay,
talking
what
about
about
white
black power.
What about it?
We're saying that okay, if we want to, since we're talking about institutionalized, okay,
Yeah.
not institutionalized racism, but internalized discrimination, right? How do we tip the scales on how black people treat each other? What kind of power do we have to do that? So I was
Also,
saying
there was the point of
Americans and
Well, no, the point is actually she pointed out. I keep forgetting your name. Elikiana. Yeah, it's a very different name.
the point is
The point was that
Getting another
there's
black
a
person's
sense,
name.
yeah,
Black
Elikiana.
person.
It's
black
there's a
power.
sense of there's a perception rather that the other person of color, or rather the white person has a lot more to offer over
The
you know,
hierarchy.
the other. Yeah.
But okay, honestly speaking, though, what is the
Consensus.
the solution?
Solution to what?
Solution to what?
To
So
the-
we haven't also openly
internalize- to
said
anti-blackness,
whether or not.
actually.
But we haven't even openly said if black people can, or people of color can be racist. You know,
They can.
and I feel like this is a yes or no question.
Why
This
do
is a
you
yes
say
or
they
no
can?
Question.
From all the definitions we've laid out,
Okay.
right? There's so many different kinds of. Okay, I'm gonna say, can black people be? I feel like there's so many things under the umbrella of racism.
Yeah,
There's
okay.
so many
Makes
different
sense.
forms:
Yeah.
discrimination, prejudice, whatever you want to call it, oppression. There's so many sexism. There's so many things that you can use to oppress someone else. I just realized that we came up with so many. It was actually quite interesting because sexism, tribalism, racism, it's so many different things that I think so many different people use to oppress other people. So I think in that sense, anyone can fall into the trap of being in any one of these.
So, do you think people
Yeah.
of color can be racist, or do you think black people can be racist?
I think a black person
Can be racist.
be prejudiced against
Okay,
someone. I think they
prejudiced.
can
Okay,
discriminate against other people because of their skin. I think a black person can hate
want
someone
to think
because of their
colored
white
people
skin.
are just racist.
But
Do you
once
think
again,
colored people are racist?
I think colored people are racist. I think Indian people are racist. I think we can.
Do you think they're racist?
Asian people are racist.
Do you think they're racist in the sense of the same hierarchy, the racial hierarchy? Like they're racist towards black people?
Yeah.
Okay.
but are we talking
Yeah.
about? Do you mean they're all like that, or
No, I think
No, not all of them, obviously, but I feel that I've been exposed to a majority, and obviously, what is it? Seek and you shall find, and I've been looking out for those type of people, and I have been finding them. So I've tend to feel that a
But how,
lot of.
like when you say you've been looking out for those people and then you've been finding them, how like
Am I also looking out for the other people? No, I'm not.
For them or looking
like how do you
out?
know that the people you're finding are actually like that and that you're not projecting it onto them, that you're not interpreting
Well,
their
that's a
actions
good
as being
point.
that way?
That's a very good point. But obviously, it's something that I would have to judge.
Give
on
us an
action, based
example
on
of
action,
somebody
right?
being-
Based on
a person of color, not black, being racist towards.
a person towards me.
Yeah,
No, so
or
towards-
something that you've seen that you would say, hey, that was racism.
towards me. Look. Let's see.
Do you guys think that
We've been going through-
people of like colored and Indian people can be racist towards black people?
Yeah, I think it's hard, like because it's like the socially
Also, can
the
we not
woke
be afraid
answer,
if you are,
you know.
like,
There's the woke answer.
There's a woke answer, then there's a your white sympathizer answer. No, but like I understand what you're saying because I've experienced it. I remember I was sitting on the library lawns one day with my friends, and then there was a group of people who read as colored sitting in front of us, and there was this one girl who kind of reads as colored herself, and then one of the other colored guys was just like, oh, so what are you? Are you like colored? Are you black? Or, like I can't really tell. And she's like, no, I'm black. And he's like, oh, then you're identifying as being ugly. And she's like, no, I don't think black people are ugly. And so then it stopped there, and then they moved on. But
Whoa.
the rest of the group
They
did
moved on,
not.
eh?
Yeah.
Mess.
I can't move on.
The rest of
punch
us,
you,
like,
no.
it was really
Okay,
shocking. 'Cause-
something.
So the rest of us sitting behind them were just really shocked. And the problem was that none of the other people in that group called that guy out and said, that is a very problematic statement. And this group, I see them walking around Wits all the time, and they do carry this superiority thing.
Are they all colored presenting?
Not really. I don't think so, but I don't know. But
Does colored presenting mean the way they
Readers
look?
colored.
Yeah, they read as colored, or they present.
there was one
as
who
colored.
didn't really read as colored. I'd read them more as black, but the rest of them all read as colored, and they all laughed at the guy's
Wow.
statement.
Damn.
The one who read as black, I don't know what he was doing. I think he may have been on his phone. The girl was a bit shocked, but
On
it's
his
not like
phone.
Yeah, it's not like she
Maybe he was calling
really.
her types.
I'm like she tried. I don't know if you call it trying, but it was a very interesting thing to watch. You know.
So in that
This is
instance,
like
that's where calling out is necessary. But I think because we've all been placed in. I think our minds have been placed in this space that we're not taught to call people out,
There was
or
there was a
we just
community.
so we just feel the need to be like, oh, that's fine.
But how do you call someone out in that situation? Because also, what's the point of calling someone out if they don't even really want to change their viewpoints? Because it benefits them. Believing that benefits them. It makes him feel good about himself because he's beautiful.
But then why does it? And
I think
I
it's
think-
really complex. Eh?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely complex.
It's
I
very
mean,
complex, especially in South Africa.
see, that's the thing.
like-
I mean, I think you could call someone out, but you can't say whether or not it's going to change them.
Yeah, no.
But I think.
But it-
So I
then
think the
it's worth a
effort
try.
should be to
But it could
try
create a
and
conversation.
change the people around it instead of them.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like if a person is trying to oppress the next person, then they're really doing it out of free will, and you're not going to change them. If you feel that this is a chance, I feel like you shouldn't pass out that opportunity to shield all of the other, because
Sometimes it can just be draining. Why is it my job to educate
That's the
every
thing.
single person that choose?
why should it be draining?
Okay, I
if
feel
you
that
want
if
change?
you are like.
It's draining, guys.
It's draining
work.
because this
You
person
can't
is
deny that it's
this
work.
person is
It's
studying
activism.
a BA. This person is taking the same
activism.
courses I'm taking.
It's not all the time when you're going to be presented with the opportunity to stand up to people.
But,
you know,
but
with that
people,
mindset.
but at the same time, in as much as it's exhausting, people who liberated for the freedom that we have, like who fought for the freedom
Yeah.
that we have now, they were exhausted. I'm pretty sure that they were, and that was just the beginning of something. It's exhausting, yeah, but it's something that needs to
It's
be
something that
ongoing.
really
I feel
And I
like
still-
ongoing.
you need to be
This is-
led to do it. I don't think you should just be like,
Yeah,
okay,
no, I'm not saying
like
that you
it's-
insert yourself
Why?
in
Why
every
should it be led though?
Because like sometimes like you have
What
to
do you mean by
differentiate
led?
between like triggering experiences
experiences,
and
yeah.
non-triggering experiences. Because sometimes your mental well-being will fall very flat when you engage in certain discussions with certain people, because certain people are not interested in changing.
they
So
are
there
set in
you
their
are busy
minds.
trying to tell this person, no, black people aren't ugly. And he's like, no, but you're ugly. Like, and then you're not ready to deal with that. Then bam, now you fall into this whole insecurity thing about and thinking that as a black person you're the lowest among all the races and stuff like that. So I'm saying that it needs to be a choice. You cannot expect everybody to always be ready to convert people, you know?
Yeah.
And like it's like telling I remember when we were in Cape Town, there was someone who was differently abled, and so sometimes I would ask her questions about her lived experiences, but other times I would go educate myself on it because I know that it's really inappropriate to do certain things.
Yeah.
And I can't put it on her to educate me
All the time,
all the
yeah.
time. So that's also what I mean by you can't it's
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's okay. I understand that, and
because some people can be really insensitive
Yeah.
about the questions that they
No, to an
ask.
extent, I
you
can
know?
support it, but I really do feel that there's. I also kind of feel that there's a lot of capable voices out there that don't take
Don't
advantage
take
of-
No,
that's
of,
true.
But I
this-
think it's a lot, like sometimes people just don't know how to, because it's like what you're saying about that colleague of yours who, instead of talking about white privilege, he diverted. Because sometimes you feel bad for calling people out on their privilege,
Why?
because you've been conditioned to sympathize with white
See,
people.
that's the
So
thing.
how about we
Yeah.
break that conditioning?
Yeah, but that's what I'm
How?
asking. How do you
How
do
do you
that
do
for
that?
someone who has been conditioned
And
to
this
do
is
that?
this is years of undoing as well, because it's passed these forms of thinking as well are passed down generations to generations.
I'm sure his parents also cater to whiteness the same way he caters
what are
to
the?
it.
I think it's
So-
I think it would be encouraging to have these types of discussions if you are to have a family and have these discussions at the dinner table to kind of, I don't know, but like I would think that that's the one way that conditioning takes place, because how else are these things learned? They learn through.
And that's
I don't know.
That goes back to to Milo's point about should we institutionalize de-learning all of these things.
But how?
Because I know, like, there are a lot.
No,
like
that,
one of my
oh,
friends.
by the way, yeah, my answer to that was that then that would definitely be reverse racism. If
I don't know. I don't think
I don't think
so.
so.
It doesn't have
I don't
to.
think so. I don't think that it has to be.
I mean, if you're just teaching people, look,
You're
I
teaching
think
people
it starts in history, right?
Yeah.
You learn what happened back in the day, all that stuff, and then you
History
go
can
further
be
and
taught,
you
so-
actually teach people. No, I mean, obviously, I'm not a teacher, so I don't know how to phrase
have a
it.
lot of
But
friends-
you teach people to love themselves.
And to
you know,
love
black
others.
people aren't bad, that kind of stuff.
Because I have a friend who only realized what the oppression that Afrikaners, inflicted on other races through university. Because before then he was just like, oh, well, I was born in 1994, I'm born free, it wasn't me, that sort of thing.
1994 was a born free.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said 1984.
Oh.
Okay.
So he was just like, no, it wasn't me. Why am I being made to
Pay
a
for
white guy.
my
Yeah,
ancestors.
there was a white guy.
But
And then
that's
in
the
the
general-
class, it's a
Yeah,
general
no, it
question.
is.
That's the general
But in that
feeling.
class, the teacher made it a point to deal with those things. And so that's when he came to grips with the role he plays as being the descendant of such bodies, So that's what I mean by institutions do help, and institutionalizing, understanding these things might actually move us forward.
But it would also come from him wanting to.
Yeah, I'm like, give
Yeah.
the people the tools that they choose to still be oblivious, and then you tried.
Exactly. And that's what I mean by society.
So when you
all
get-
the tools need to be there.
So next time you get so-called born free, shooting out a statement like that. My question to them would be then: are you free from economic suppression? Are you free from? Because that was racial and apartheid. That
No,
was the struggle then.
What do you
For
say
the
to a
born
white born
frees,
free though?
to
What do you say to a
born
white born free person?
Look, they still privileged, okay? They born out of privilege.
But you're privileged too. You have a nice watch. You have a great job.
I'm not, no.
Yeah, well, I don't
that's
speak
not the
for
basis
black
of privilege.
people, so-
That is not the basis of white privilege or black privilege. And we're not talking about the actual meaning of privilege. Yes, I am privileged to have, okay? How I got it is where the actual, white privilege context came
So
from.
how did you get it that I didn't get it that way?
So you
No,
know,
no, sorry. What about all the other people who don't have it? Because I mean, because the stories are different. Just because
exactly.
you have something, it doesn't
don't-
mean.
Yeah, let's not
Yeah.
stick
Yeah.
onto the single.
You're 2% of
Exactly.
the black population.
Exactly. Like,
has.
I don't.
You're
If I don't have
97%
black tax, it doesn't mean that other black people don't.
It's a 500
I
grand
feel
watch,
like
by the
it's
way.
a- it's
so
a-
it's not that expensive.
500 rand is a lot.
500
There's
is
60
500
rand
For
watches.
watch?
Is what people are getting paid.
guys,
Look,
guys
it's not-
are-
it's not
guys,
a lot,
No,
but
guys
it's a
are out
lot.
there
It's
not
buying
a lot for the
freaking
middle
2,000,
class.
4,000 rand
It's a lot for
watches.
the-
But you see-
guys, like,
Okay,
I
let's
find that
focus.
these
though.
discussions are very difficult to have because I've had these discussions with black people who too say, no, well, you should work hard. And that's when capitalism comes in because we've been raised in a capitalist society that tells you that if you work hard, you're going to get to where you need to get.
And I think there
I
was
mean, you
there was
could.
an actual
Doesn't
Yeah.
mean raise.
there was
you could.
there was an actual
You
debate
could,
that
but
people
still.
You're gonna have.
There was an
if
actual
they
debate
choose
that-
Okay,
to-
sorry.
Sorry,
There was an
that
actual debate.
Caesar, that guy,
Tizon Pofuwa.
yes, and Euphonic had on Twitter, and that actually I think that kind of and gives
What
an
was
he
attitude
talking
of
about?
it. So he was speaking. So Euphonic was saying something about getting to where he was by hard work, So he
Yeah.
was like, but not everyone, and he's like, but you have the tool, but not everyone has the same tools. So it's just kind of that not
It's
everyone
just about-
has the
yeah.
same
It's honestly, it's
platform, and that's why,
opportunity,
Yeah.
and that's
it's
when,
it's environment.
and that's
There's so much involved.
exactly, and that's why earlier on when we spoke
The
about
majority
equality,
doesn't have.
that's why earlier on when we spoke about equality, I was like, from which form, like. How can we measure equality when we're already on unequal ground?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so, okay, that's another discussion that we were speaking about earlier on. But then that also still raises now I forgot what we were talking about.
It happens, right?
But yeah, but this is a lot. But we were speaking about undoing mindsets. But then it would also come. I mean, if you look at people from schools like St. John's, that black population, some of their parents would be like, no, I don't want my kid to hang around kids who come from Soweto or something like that. they would say things like that. And how then do we then challenge the way they think or their parents think into that they interact, because that's actually a form of discrimination. And so how do we
we just do.
But
I
how?
feel like, can we just stop asking how? Can we just do?
You do.
Like how?
You do when you don't know how to do it. How do you build a chair if you don't know how to build
I
a chair?
challenge them.
Don't
like
just-
verbally,
you just
right
build
there.
it.
And don't
Just
think
cut it
you can't
down.
be politically correct all the time.
No, you challenge them right there. That is
Say
what I
whatever
keep
comes to
talking
mind.
about when I say we pass out on these opportunities.
No, but I'm like, we had the Freedom Charter where we were like, oh, we're gonna do all of these great things and stuff like that, and then look at us now. So
No,
if
but-
you don't now make up a plan, it's just gonna carry on
No, but
being
I
a
think
dream.
we need to think about
Guys.
individuals. I'm not going to change South Africa. I
Yeah.
can't.
Exactly.
I can change my co-worker's
The next
mind.
person.
I can, you know what I mean?
And that's where it starts.
Exactly. Don't
That's where it
think-
starts. Like, guys, this whole we're past racial discrimination, okay, or not? No, sorry, yo.
Cancel for twinkling.
About to pull a Kanye.
We're not past racial,
delete
but
your account?
right?
And like your life.
So God. But we need to advance from that's at least better wording for it, from the racial oppression subject, right, and go into, because obviously we're going to win this battle of racial oppression, of white versus black, right? But what we're then going to fall into is obviously
Black versus
black versus black, and we need to start fighting that now, right? We need to start by just doing it.
But how do you just do it?
talk.
You don't
Like,
just drive a car. You
so
learn.
you look, at the end of the day, you're gonna hit a mark. There's gonna be a spark there. If you hear somebody going, and yes, I understand there's some people are outspoken, some are not. Okay, but when an opportunity presents itself for you to just for that 1 second, point out what your standpoint is or your view about what they just said, do so. Let them question themselves. If they're very confident, about how they feel, so be it. Don't obviously now get into a debate with that person, but try at the very least you can do is try to get that person to question how they feel about that next person.
Has that been effective for you guys? In the long term, do you think you can actually change somebody's mind?
I think in the long term it's up to the other person and whether
And
they
Exactly.
want
And in
to
the short
change.
term?
Yeah.
In the short term, it's up to us to actually put the
Yeah.
not even solutions, but put our opinions
Options.
across.
Yeah.
And say, nah, that's wrong.
That's not it. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then they can go back and, because ultimately you can't convince someone
Yeah.
to not be an atheist, for instance. You can't convince someone to change a religion, but you can tell them how you feel.
So racism is a religion.
No, I said for instance.
No, I'm kidding, but I
Come
think
on.
it's
you know what I mean?
interesting.
Like,
There's a
I'm-
belief system.
It's a belief system, yeah.
institutionalized, so-
It's
Yeah, but
socialized.
what I'm saying is, you can't change a person's mind. You can't just switch it off. But you can put something across
Just
that
put
makes
something,
them
and that's
think.
how.
I don't know, I
That's
feel-
how you
And
put
at
it
the end of the
across,
day, it's
and you do that. Look, universe with you. That person might come back and go, how do
Hey,
you
changed
mean?
my mind 10
No.
years
Might come back to you with a question. You say no, but I don't like what you just said based on this and that and that and that. If they want to stand remain as they are, they will. But if you have maybe sparked a question, about how, or led them to question themselves, they'll come back and ask, okay, what do you mean? Can we talk about this a little more? And that's how. That's
And if
how
they
we can go
don't,
about
you
it.
try it.
I don't know, okay, I agree with that. That is a possible way, and I think the solution does need to be intersectional, where we do that and we do other things as well. Because I kind of feel like Frantz Fanon was doing that back then. Not much changed, So
Times.
yeah,
I think you're right
So
about
when
the
you say
intersectionality.
intersectional, what other methods do you think we should use?
Institutionalizing, teaching people about this stuff, because a lot of us only learn
What
this
do we
stuff
mean
once we
by
get to university.
institutionalizing that, though?
Yeah, because we're still on the
on
point of, I said institutionalizing
Okay,
it.
institutionalizing it through education, through legislature,
And
things
I said
like that.
Legislature.
that would be a
Yeah, legislature and the thing of
No, I don't think that the reason why it can't be reversed, and this is why like I wanted us to define racism at the beginning of the conversation, but we are running out of time. But yeah, okay, maybe we can just do closing points now.
Okay.
But really, that's why I was saying that racism has to be defined as discrimination enabled by power, backed by power. You know, it's about me having enough historical power and present power to change how you live your life. You know, for example, if I'm let's say, what can I say? Okay, well, anyway, no, wait, I want to give you an example. If you say to a white person, oh my God, you're so racist, whatever, you know, it doesn't change the way they live their life, okay? I mean, it's not going to affect how they get a job, it's not going to affect their credits, it's not going to affect anything about their lives. But if a white person does the same thing to you, they can actually affect your credit score. They can affect if you get a job or not. They have that power over you that we don't have over them. They have economic power over you. You know, they have privilege over you. And that's what racism to me is. It means that I have, I hold these certain beliefs, but I also have the power to act on my beliefs. And that changes the way that you live, you know, your life. And so I'm saying that even if we institutionalize these kind of, if we institutionalize teaching all children and teaching society about equality of races and the value of races, I mean, since race is a construct, we can't even really use it, but you know, it can never be reverse racism because our point isn't to marginalize
That
people.
may be our view here. We're not trying to oppress white people, for instance, but some people might be. But I don't speak for those people.
But just to cut in there, I mean, look at the whole Spur scandals that have happened, and just a lot of the
scandal?
Yeah, like when you talk about racist occurrences that happen at these restaurants, you have AfriForum who come in and they say, guys, boycott that company, and then that company come, and then white people, what do they wholesale do it, you know, and that affects that company. That company launches an apology. Black people together, we have that power, but do we ever enable that power? Do we ever say, guys,
that speaks back to
we don't have the power to enable that.
We have that power. We believe that we don't have that power, but we have that power. But we never.
When you think about
but we're too
ShopRite,
separated.
Yeah, the
like
thing
the
is-
fact that we look at each other as different tribes and stuff like
and
that.
black people would actually be like, no. Some black people would even agree and be like, actually, I don't think they were wrong. I don't think they were being racist. Let's not support. White people, on the other hand, would wholesale support. Remember that the case with the waitress where the guy said, no, give us back the land. We're not going to pay for the bill. Remember that?
No,
and
I
how,
don't remember it. I've never heard it.
No, they were like, no, it was in Cape Town, and they're like, you remember what happened? Hey?
yeah.
Was it the kids that were running after? No, that also happened in Cape Town.
It was just
Something
this.
else.
It was a waitress, and then these guys said, no, we won't pay for the bill or the tip until you give us the land, something like that.
So this was a white waiter.
Yeah, white waitress.
White waitress.
And they wrote
And
on
then she
a
cried.
slip.
They wrote it on the slip, and she cried. And then what happened? White South Africa came to her aid, and some black South Africans came to her aid, created a fund like a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe for her.
Imagine
So that she can
Is
be
that
what?
not
I'm not sure if it
white
was for her.
privilege?
Dry her
Freaking
tears.
pinnacle, guys.
That's the thing, but
that's
like as black
fucking
people,
white privilege though.
Black
Hold
people
up.
can do that as
Hold
well,
up,
but
they
choose
created
not
this
to.
GoFund to what?
I don't know
For
what-
emotional distress. No, sorry, I'm just trying
Because
to
she's a
understand.
waitress and her life is hard.
So are you being sarcastic?
no,
Yeah, she
literally,
is.
Because I'm trying to.
Yeah, she is.
literally, it was for her. It wasn't for. That's the thing. But like, but there were even black people contributing to that. Like, I'm so sorry on behalf of my entire race, guys. This is what I'm saying. Why black on black?
Why did you tell me this?
discrimination
I'm
is
gonna
just
start
what I
hating
think
my
about
blackness
us
now.
being
Like seriously.
so separated in terms of what we think we can do, in terms of what we think is right and what is wrong. In a sense, it's good because I remember you once mentioned that it's good to see. I don't want to bring that movie up, but
That movie.
Black
Panther. But you said how good it was to see the different kinds of blackness coexisting. So I think it's good that there's so many different kinds of black opinions, but at the same time we should be able to come together for something that betters black people.
That's
you know
the
what I
thing.
mean?
I think so.
Instead of going to neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's close.
close.
Let's have concluding comments.
Good talk.
Ellie.
I was about to say, isn't she?
Elikiana. Closing comments.
So I genuinely just feel as if before we label anything, we should understand what we mean. And that's why I just going back to concepts, because semantics can play a very big role in how we view things.
And we get lost
and
in
we get lost in them because we're so busy throwing things in, which is like, woo, capitalism, woo, racism.
Yeah, sorry.
So, but like I do understand like what he mentioned earlier. Like I just feel as if we just need to define things so that we can understand these things. And I guess in the spaces that we are in, we should try when we can to interrogate people's thoughts of certain things that they say that are prejudice. Otherwise, they'll walk away thinking that that was right, and that's just another person that we could have, no, just educate. No. But yeah, it starts in the spaces that you're in, I would assume, and then it just kind of works its way out.
I think Jeff should go. He seemed very passionate.
Okay, closing points. There is a chance of people of color being racist, right? However, the general, and this is the global general context, is that black people of color cannot be racist.
Or people of color or black people.
No, so black people, black people, black people cannot be racist, and I feel like this is the general perception based on the facts around apartheid, based on the facts around slavery, right? And these are facts. These are something that actually happened, and we know why we say black people can't be racist, and covering that point in that context with, again, the semantics is I feel kind of running away from an opportunity for the black majority to liberate themselves, right? We need to stick to, because we know why we say black people, and this is not because of the dictionary meaning, right? This is of the actions that have been carried out to black people that were actually oppressing black people, and the effects thereof that we actually live under at this moment, right? Black people cannot be racist under that context.
Any closing comments?
I'm not too sure about the answer to if black people can be racist or not, but I do think that black people can be oppressive bodies, and when they carry power, they can use that power to oppress other people based on their race. I think black people can definitely do that, and I think we do need to be having more conversations about how we rectify that and how we move forward as a people, and identifying as a people might help us, and painting blackness in a positive light as well, since although a lot of us are proud to say black, you're not really, because you're still kind of conditioned into thinking black means bad and black means criminal, black means evil and such things. So I think that's when institutionalizing correcting people's mindset probably play a big role in solving the problem. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's
Closing comments.
I think, as I said earlier, there's a lot of different ways that, before I say that, do I think that black people or people of color can be racist?
Well, I think you should separate them.
Yeah.
Should I?
Yeah.
Okay, so are we asking if black people are?
Like, can people of color be racist, and then can black people be racist?
Okay, for both, I say yes.
Okay.
Because as I said before, if we're talking about racism as discriminating or hating or being prejudiced against a person because of the color of their skin, then I think anyone can be racist. That doesn't mean that everyone is. I think it's all a case-by-case thing. You need to talk to individuals and find out why they feel a certain way about another race. So yeah, in terms of the way black people feel about white people, for instance, that's very complicated. So I feel like with every person it will probably be a very different story, but it's all rooted in what has happened between black people and white people. And yeah, in terms of solutions, I think it starts with conversations. Like, you just have to talk to the next person, whoever's close to you. Obviously, you're not just gonna like try and jam stuff down their throat. But if something comes up, then it's I don't want to say it's your duty, but if it offends you, then say something. And if you feel like they shouldn't be thinking that way, say something, talk to them. But ultimately, it is up to the other person to change their mindset if they want to. Yeah.
Closing thoughts.
Okay, well, I think on one hand, because we have such a different view of what racism is, I think that's the core of why we can't agree on. And I think that's also important. It's important not to just have the same viewpoints. I would say that I think people of color can be racist because they are closer to whiteness in terms of the hierarchy, and they've internalized the closeness to whiteness, and so act out subconsciously, consciously, on oppressing other people of color, basically. And I think that was institutionalized. You know what I mean? Even with the way that so much more money was spent on Indian colored and white kids than black kids during apartheid. But I don't think that black people can be racist. But I do think that we can discriminate and can enable prejudice because of internalized racism. Thank you everyone for coming, and we'll see you at the next one.
Awesome. Cool. Hey.